Greetings, this is Amy Wentley, and this video covers how to reinforce Steek stitches using a sewn-in backstitch. So there is a video that I did previously to this on how to create reinforcements with a crochet hook, and that's what we did here. In that video, there's also instructions on how to make this swatch, and this is actually, I did cast on 50 stitches in the round, worked 15 rows, and then bound off. So it would look something like this when you're finished with it, and if you want to block it, you can. That's great. So in this video, if you'd like to follow along with me, we're going to need some guide yarn. That's a darker yarn contrasting with this color. We need a reinforcing yarn, which is going to be a different color from our work, and probably a lighter color yarn than the one we worked with. And so you will need a darning needle. You will need a sharp pair of scissors. You will need your swatch to work on. Your swatch needs to be 100% wool. So does your reinforcing yarn. That's so they stick together, hold in place. So let's start out where we want to go ahead and do the steek. We've already cut this steek on this side. We're going to use the same swatch. This would, ideally normally be in the round, but we've already used it once. So what we're going to do is find the middle of our swatch, and we're going to put in two markers that will designate our 3 steeking stitches that we're going to use for reinforcing and cutting. Okay, usually people will add 5 steeking stitches to their sweater, sometimes more. Sometimes if you're using more than one color, you can alternate colors and have columns be different colors so that you can see them. But let's say we had 5 steeking stitches that we added to our project here. Okay, we're going to work with the 3 middle ones. Okay, and what I want you to look at on this is that we have the 3 columns of stitches, and I want you to look at, I'm going to move a ruler over here so you can see. Okay, these are our 3 columns of stitches in the middle. So this is 1, 2, 3. Okay. What we are going to do is we're actually going to sew a back stitch into this column and into this column. We're calling this column A, this column B, this column C. Okay? We are going to start out by marking the middle of column A, and this is ultimately where we are going to cut our steek when the time comes. Okay, so this is columns A in the middle, B to the right, C to the left. So we're going to put a piece of guide yarn down the middle of column A. So I'm going to take my darker colored yarn here, I'm going to put it on my darning needle, and I'm going to go through the stitches in this whole column, just in a few places. Okay, this is going to mark the beginning, and then I want to leave some yarn laying on the top so I can see it. Okay, we're going to do another stitch down here, and make sure you stay in the same column. And at the very bottom, we're going to put the guide yarn through there and pull it through, and that's your guide yarn. Okay, now just take a second and pull it apart and make sure that it's all traveling down the same column. Okay, and that's where we went under to secure the stitch. So this is great. This is all one column, and this is ultimately where we are going to cut our yarn. So now let's go on to the next step. I'll show you now how to do a back stitch reinforcement for holding your Steek stitches. So this method, I think, is a little easier actually than the crochet method. Although if you've crocheted before, it can be pretty sweet and easy for you too. If you had trouble with the crochet reinforcement, try this one because it's pretty straightforward. What you're going to do is you're going to take a darning needle, and I'm using a big one, big blue one here, so you can really see what I'm doing. And I'm going to take a piece of yarn that I can handle. This is probably about a yard of yarn for this little swatch. If you're doing a lot, if you're doing the whole front of a cardigan, a long cardigan, you probably can't take a piece of yarn long enough to do the whole thing. So you're going to have to kind of do this reinforcement in pieces. But let's get started. So I've got about a yard of yarn. I'm going to thread it onto a darning needle. This one has a really big eye. That's kind of nice. And then you've got your swatch here. Okay, this is my cast on end. This is my bind off end. This is my guideline. This is column A. Okay, I am now going to rotate everything 90 degrees to the left. Okay, so what I've got here now is my guideline yarn, and then that's going through the middle of column A, and so I need to go over to the middle of column B, and these are going to be V's pointing to the right. Okay. Okay, and we're going to be going up this column of V's, but we want to start off by securing the yarn to the bind off edge. So you want to come up at the very bottom of column B and pull through. You're coming from under the fabric towards you this way. Okay, so there's my tail, and I came through this way, coming up from underneath the fabric. And I'm going to come that exact same way again in the exact same spot and pull. And when I do this, you'll see that I am going to form Why is there yarn everywhere? I'm going to form a loop here. This loop formed from me pulling that yarn through. And I want to take my needle through that loop and pull it. I'm collecting all kinds of different yarn and when I'm sewing. You know, you should probably have a pretty clear workspace before you do this. There's a piece of advice. Okay, and then we're going to pull this knot. And I need to go through again because I noticed it didn't really knot. Now I'm going to pull through again, and this is going to make a knot. If my life depends on it. There you go. There's your knot. Okay? That's good and secure at the bottom. Now I am going to zoom in. So you see there at the bottom, I came up from the bottom, came around again, came up from the bottom, came in the loop, and tied a knot. Okay? Now what we're going to do is this column here, B, is the one that we want. Okay? We are going to start out by coming in before the first ladder. Do you see that? And we're coming from the top. So we're going to come in before the first ladder. We're going to come under the first ladder like that and pull through. This is just for the first stitch. Okay? So that's under the first ladder and through like that. Now we're going to go under where we started again before that first ladder. Is right back where we started again. But this time, this first ladder is our first ladder. We're going to skip the second ladder and we are going to come up, skip the second ladder, and we're going to come up right next to the second ladder. Okay? And that's just for the second stitch. We're going to be getting into the back stitches in just a minute. You've got to kind of set it up a little bit. Okay? Now, you'll see here that I have a stitch that got wrapped with that last stitch. I've got a ladder next to it, and I've got a ladder after it. Okay? What I want to do is I want to go to the right, and I want to go at the end of this first stitch I did to the right of that next ladder. See that? To the right of that next ladder. I'm going to go under my yarn and come up to the left of the following. Oh, I'm actually knitting into my mat down there. Okay, let's show you this again. I'm going to go in next to my first stitch, under the first ladder, under my working yarn, and under the next ladder. So it's going to be ladder, yarn, ladder, and pull through. Okay. So here's a stitch. Here's a ladder, yarn, next ladder. I'm going to go down next to the stitch, under the first ladder, under my working yarn, under my second ladder, and pull through. And there's my second stitch. So I want to go in next to that stitch, under the first ladder, under my working yarn, under the second ladder, and pull through. So stay along this column of stitches and you'll be fine. So far we've got stitch stitch, 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 stitch. So this is our stitch. This is the next ladder, our working yarn, and the ladder after that. So I put it down next to my stitch, on the left of my stitch, under the first ladder, under my working yarn, under the second ladder. So I am going to pause the video for a moment, and I'm going to work towards the end, and then I'll show you how to end off on that side. Be right back. Hi, I'm back. I'm near the end of reinforcing this side, and I'm going to put my needle in to the left of this completed stitch, under the ladder, under the working yarn, and under another ladder, and pull through. And I'm going to go ahead and put it next to the ladder here, next to the stitch here to the left, under the ladder, and under, this is kind of a crossed ladder because it's part of the bind off. And I'm going to pull that through. And now I'm going to put my yarn in next to the last completed stitch here, and I'm going to secure it to the bind off. And so I'm going to put my needle down, and I'm going to come through, and I'm going to come all the way out under the bind off. And that's your last stitch there then, okay? And I'm going to come up again, my yarn's coming out of the bottom here now. I'm going to come up again and come through the top again. I'm going to make a stitch along the edge here, you'll see. And as I'm pulling out my guideline while I'm at it, okay, when I pull this stitch through here, I'm going to be making a loop here, okay, and my yarn is coming out of the bottom now. I'm going to take it through this loop on the side, out of the bottom, and just pull this tight, and do it one more time. Pull it through, push it through this loop here, take it through this loop here, and pull it tight. See what this looks like? Pull it tight. So I kind of double knot there at the end just to make sure that I've got it. Okay? So that's a reinforced steek done with a back stitch and yarn. This is what the back looks like. Looks pretty good. This is a lot more compact than the crochet steek. If you're working with a really fine piece and you want a fine edge, you don't want the steek to be bulky at all, this is a good choice for you. Okay, I'm going to cut off the remainder of my steek yarn here. This steek yarn stays in here. It stays with your project, okay? If you want to make a nice coordinating color that you can see well, that's fine too. People are not really going to see this. It's going to be inside your sweater, okay? So you've finished the right side binding. And what we want to do is, we're not going to rotate this time. We're just going to come down to column C right there. So this is A with the guideline going through it, and now this is B with the stitches going through them. And you want to come down to A again, the middle of A, and then come over to the next full column, because this is half a column of A right here. You come over a full column. The V's again, in this full column, the V's are pointing that way to the right, and you're just going to do exactly what you did up here down here. Okay, so I will remind you what that is. You will put your reinforcing yarn through your darning needle. You're going to locate column C, and that's going to be, again, this row of V's. So we come down to the bottom of this row of V's, and we are going to come in at the, this is a bind off here. Yes, no, that's the cast on. Okay. And we're going to punch our needle up through the bottom of that column of V's and bring it up towards us. And then we're going to go down under again and bring the needle up, and we're going to bring it through the loop and make a knot, and we're going to bring it through the loop and make another knot, just to make sure that we have that reinforcement yarn secured at the cast on there. Okay, so now let's check again and make sure we've got our V's. Okay, and I'm going to come in a little closer for you. So that's our that's our secured reinforcement yarn at the end, and then this is the column of V's that I'm going to work up. You can see those V's. Okay, these are not V's, these are hats. They go the other way, so we're over on this column. This is half a column, this is the right half of column C, left half of column C. So we're going to come through to the first ladder to get this going. We're going to come through the first ladder and pull to the left. Then we're going to come down where we first went in again. We're going to come under that ladder that we just did, and then under a second ladder and pull it through. And then we start our cadence where we go down next to a stitch, to the left of a stitch, under the ladder, under the working yarn, under the next ladder. And my yarn just came off out of my darning needle, so, and I'm using this extra big needle so you can see it. Normally I wouldn't use one this big. Stitch to the left, you're going to go under the right ladder, under the working yarn, under the left ladder, and pull. And I'm going to work all the way to the end, and when I get to the end I will show you how I secure off this second end, which should look pretty familiar to you. So I'll be right back. I'm back, and here I am near the end. There's my guide yarn, this is my working yarn, and I'm going to come down next to the stitch to the left of it. Then I'm going to go under the ladder and under my working yarn, and then under my last ladder. Then I'm going to come next to the left side of this stitch and come completely under the bind off. I'm going to come around back where I went down here, same stitch, push it through, and then I'm going to take my needle through the yarn again to make a knot. And just to be sure I'm secure, I'm going to go through the loop and through the loop and pull again. Alright, I'm going to cut my yarn off. Going to back up so you can see what we look like. Okay, and this is my second set of Steek reinforcements. So what you've got here is column A down the center of column A, and then this Steek goes down column B, and this one goes down column C. The reinforcement, the Steek reinforcement. Okay? And next you will see how to cut this. Now it's time to cut our steek. We've got the guide going down the middle. We've got the reinforcement done on both sides. That's what it looks like in the back. And so I am now going to take out my guide. You can keep it in if you want to. I just find it a little distracting. And so you're going to be cutting up the middle of column A here. So you've got like a full column on each side of what you're cutting, and then you've got the steek reinforcement. So we're going to start by putting our scissors through the bottom, first couple of stitches down there, okay? Make sure that this is column A and that you've got a whole column there, so you can see my whole column. And that's where I'm going to cut. You can keep your guideline in there if you want to. And I'm going to cut the first couple of stitches. Make sure these are sharp scissors. And I put in a couple more stitches and cut. I just do a few stitches at a time and cut. I'm sorry, I was interrupted there for a minute. So you just put a couple more in and cut, couple more in and cut, couple more in and cut to the end. When you're finished, you can weave in the reinforcement ends into your piece. If you were going to add a band, you would fold over to the next line of stitches and pick those up, and this would be on the inside of your work. So that is how you steek using a back stitch reinforcement. Another way you can reinforce steeks, and I will not show you this is completely up to you. You can actually use a sewing machine if you want to and sew up one end, sew up the other side. If you feel comfortable putting your needle into your sewing machine or your work into your sewing machine, your wool, that's great. Go ahead, you can try that too. But I'd try it on a swatch first. So thank you for viewing, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye-bye.